Continuing our movie marathon of PlayStation's Way of the Samurai, leading up to the release of Ghost of Yotei on PS5 Pro. Just gotta make sure it's out there. But for those of us who don't know, Gamescom is happening right now. They're showing a lot. They have showed a lot of trailers. I've been at work all morning, so I am actually gonna hunker down after this, maybe after the gym, and do a watch along. So look forward to that. But if you want to talk about samurai movies, oh baby, this guy right here. Now, maybe it's because it's one of the older films on this list that we've seen so far. I should have been smart and actually acknowledge what year it was. Nope, no year. But if you can say 2003, I want to say that's like a vibe we're getting here. 2003, at a point where samurai movies have been a thing. The culture that existed with Japan and the inspirations that came from that led up to this moment in technology, in historical acceptance, in presentation, to what I believe is the best film, samurai film, I've seen. That's not saying much. Granted, we are learning about the way of the samurai through these films and seeing what topics and what important matters are being portrayed through these films, and that is what I admire most about this. It feels like we're going back in time to understand something that needed to be said. So when we talk about 13 Assassins, a story of rebellion, a story of a revolution. Fortunately, maybe not the revolution France would have hoped for, or something societal pivoting, something that gathered all of society, where humanity had a voice into what should happen next or what injustices needed to be worked on. Instead, we have feudal Japan, a time where the warlords, aka samurai households, the shogun state, are in power. And as we know, as we've learned, as we've experienced throughout time, absolute power corrupts absolutely. What does that mean? It means that when you are the head shogun, and you like being the head shogun, and you realize that, hey man, I don't have anybody's gonna take up my mantle as the emperor. I don't have descendants. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this relative of mine. Maybe they haven't had that much interaction. Maybe they're not the, let's call it the nicest person in the universe. But they're my blood. So that means through them, I can keep control, I can keep power. There's a word for that. I'm blanking on that. But nepotism is one hell of a drug. Because we see what a sheltered life, a life without opposition, a life without genuine opinion of its own people does to the ego and to the rule of an empire. Long story short, there is this guy that has been pushed to be the next shogun, not necessarily through bloodline, but as an adoptance. And in the world of the samurai, the people who know these people, these families, understand what politics are being played here. We actually start off this film with one of the samurais committing, in English we call it seppuku. I forgot what they called it in Japanese, but they're nakiro, or it means in or whatever. And yeah, it's where you stab yourself and you cut your bowels open so you can show how strong your will was up until the very end. And that is the beginning of this whole movement. One single action of defiance created what would become the final act of rebellion. Like any good samurai film, we have a power struggle, you know. This is a time of feudal Japan where there's so much concentrated power on one side of the nation, and it just brings unbalance to the rest of the population, to a point where the population has to begin to think for themselves, which is incredibly ironic because the whole shtick of wanting to stay in power is dominion over those peoples and their opinions. But the moment you stop working with / catering to the will of the people, you start to disconnect. And sooner or later, the French Revolution has proved this. Millions of revolutions around the universe have proved this. When enough is enough, it takes the valor of strong, just men to bring light back to this island of the sun, to the nation, island of the sun, emperor of the island of the rising sun. And that's what we get, man. We have an old shogun system realizing that what we're doing with this new empire, how we're trying to rule in this way, in this oppression, in this negativity, is not the will of the people. It's not the way. This is not the way. So we get this interesting plot, a last hurrah, a Hail Mary, if you're American, to say this monarchy, this clearly unjust human who does nothing but spread hate, anger, and this displeasure for the sake of some feeling of control. Control over lives, control over death, control over subjugation. Subjugation is what we see. A ruthless person, not necessarily because they are a terrible person, but because deep in their eyes, in their soul, you understand that there is some people so crooked and set in their ideals, in their set ways, that do not have the capability to adapt or change. The universe has granted them a silver platter, or giving them the easiest, most comfortable lifestyle. And it's apparent as to why they wouldn't want to let it go. But correct me if I'm wrong, but being unable to let go of the simplicities, of the comforts, goes to prove that you're not in control. So, through the work of a few brave, independent minds, we gather the last remaining samurai. In a time of peace and less feudal warring, the few that can still operate a katana with grace and strength, bound together to serve under one homie, one shogun, one samurai head. And it's pretty cool, man. I can't stress enough how much it means to a male a male independent present mind to find their purpose, especially in a chaotic universe. And I believe that is what we have come to find here. There's a line where he rounds everybody up. We get your initial scene of everybody gathering up together, and he's giving us the main the pep talk, and he ends it a specific way, which originally threw me off. You know, me being the authoritative, argumentative outlier, but he says, "You men have sworn these lives to me, and I will use them as I find fit." Which, again, initially you're thinking, listen, we're trying to destroy this guy who's out here trying to plaster his name on everything and state that he is the peak, the ultimate, the alpha, the almighty, the omega. But then you got this other guy who's not all there, right? Not as an emperor level status, but his people, his men, his few independent beings commit. There is a understanding, there is a strong belief, a trust. Yes, some of them might have asked for a little bit of money, but regardless, you bring the cream of the crop that you have, and you pray to God that this football play is gonna make the touchdown. That's a sports term. So, as we begin our journey, we get conflicts of two warring sides, a sort of cat and mouse game where we know the other team is planning something. So how will the Empire react and try to formulate a way to keep this thing, this empire, still going? And the question becomes, to what cost? If your whole life's purpose is to bring a cause into fruition, at what point do you look at that plant growing and you think, oh, this isn't what we need, this isn't what we want? Why would we, who have just spent years in a feudal, warring state, and we're finally knowing peace, and sure, things aren't perfect, but there is now a junior head who wants to bring back this era of warring states. A mind who has never known obstacles, a mind that has never known conflict, that has never known struggle, comes to the idea that what we need is more war, more death, more bloodshed, more depression, without even considering the cost, or maybe considering the cost and disregarding it. Irrelevancy, responsibility, out the window. Because they didn't earn that power. They didn't learn how to cultivate your own strength. They just assumed that it was their natural right or their God-given purpose, or just what they were meant to do. So, seeing the depravity and just how disgusting a human soul can be, there is a responsibility. There is a requirement of good men to speak up when disaster, when evil is in fruition. There's a quote that says, all evil needs to grow is for the good men to stay silent. And who knows? Who knows? In this grand timeline of the universe, who knows how many people have had to play that role to 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 save what little humanity we had left. I can't make a time machine yet. I haven't gone that far back, but it's always incredible to see the band of rebels who believe in something more than just today and tomorrow. These 13 men who, by some twisted, sick fate, decided to bring them all together for one mission and one life. And that is your 2 hours, 1.5 hours of pure samurai, culturally conflicted awesomeness. Everything about this, from just the way the camera picks things up to the way that even the Japanese style of videography is now crisper, right? Maybe that's inspired by Hollywood and stuff, but it brings a certain beauty to the shots. It shows a new sense of of understanding. Like we've learned from our past, and we're now giving you this beautiful rendition, representation, this new version of scene. And yes, the choreography with the katanas, top notch. Again, it might just be because the cameras are new, or it might just be because directors kind of found what they wanted to do with these things in this generation, or maybe there was just a huge inspiration from the past to represent this type of film. But let me tell you, 13 Assassins is one of the best films I've seen in a cool minute. Yes, we just saw weapons. I love weapons a lot. That is horror. This brings weight, a certain, even if Weapons is about how the Illinois school was mass shootings, that's what that's about. If you don't know, Weapons is about how guns and in schools and shootings affect the children in school. That's what that movie is about. But seeing how deep this goes, just how depraved those times could have been, where you can believe that there is this narcissistic lord going around cutting people's limbs, cutting off a woman's limbs just for pleasure. And you see at what we've become, who we are, and what certain people do just to feel famous, that yeah, we do believe in the evil of men. We do believe in the darkness in the hearts. But thank God, or whatever spiritual hope you want to hang your coat on, that there are humans they are men, right? Not just men, men in a predominant time of disaster and hatred and disgust. There was still a band of men who said, no, enough is enough. And if it takes our 13 lives to do something about this tragedy, then we will lay down our lives at the request of the man who gave his everything to make this happen, to bring a brighter future to Japan's tomorrow. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we need. It's what we require. And I would highly recommend watching 13 Assassins. I just found out you can watch it on YouTube for free if you want to check it out. Go check it out. And just get an understanding of what evil does to the hearts of men when left unchecked. And as unfortunate as things may be in this moment, I would highly support the idea that we haven't lost yet. So, do me a favor, whip out your katanas, go watch 13 Samurais, and have yourself a good time. I really do think this is one of the creams of the crops. Again, it might just be because it might just be because it's one of the newer and it had a more finer vision, like a more finessed vision of what we were trying to accomplish. But man, when I'm saying that this is one of my favorite films, this is it, man. This just brought a lot to the table, and yeah, I can only hope that the next two movies, I believe we're down to two left, that we step into have something to bring to the table that this hasn't hit yet, because we've seen a lot of those Warring State era films, but I'm very curious to see what other inspirations and topics we get to talk about. So if you haven't checked it out, yes, you can still go down to the Alamo Draft House in Los Angeles and go check out 13 Assassins. Please, have a good time. Enjoy your show. And it's been your boy, EXP 626. Watching you. Buenos dias. Buenos tardes. And Gamescom later. I think I might hit the gym first. We'll see what happens there. But until then, thanks for watching. Ciao. Mata ne.